No, sir. No, sir.
All right. So we talked about Palworld coming to PlayStation, and Nintendo and Pokemon are suing them for copyright infringement. But it's not the designs of the characters. It's not any of the things that you would think. It's because of the essentially the Pokeball animation that's what they're suing them for, is because of the animation of throwing the ball and then it like captures the monster, and that is what they're suing them for. Thoughts?
so, yeah, this is definitely completely ridiculous. And I mean, the fact that they say this is a violation of patent just because of the fact that you throw a ball at an entity and said ball captures that entity is absurd, considering the fact that before Power World, there were other games that had this same mechanic.
But they
Even
weren't
other
as
games,
successful.
even other games that uh, were sort of Pokemon clones. Like Nexomon is one that I can think of off the top of my head. And that game actually had, I believe, a sequel as well. But it's not a new thing. Other games have done this very thing, and the fact that also Nintendo filed this patent after Power World came out, it just shows how petty Nintendo is with stuff like this. And I mean, the crazy thing is, yes, Power World, out of all the Pokemon clones, and I even hesitate to call it a Pokemon clone because of the fact that it's not even really a Pokemon clone. It's sort of a survival game with Pokemon like characters in it.
Yeah.
Because like you could really remove all of the pals, and if you could probably even just compare it to like say Ark Survival at that point, just because that's pretty much everything else you're gonna be doing in the game. So the fact that they only now file a patent, it just, I mean, I don't even know why they would even do it in the first place, because even though Power World was successful and came out and it made such a big splash, the fact of the matter today is that it sells so much less than an average Pokemon game would sell. So like, why would Nintendo feel at all intimidated or even threatened by such a game that sells worse than what they've done? I mean, even with the controversy behind Violet and Scarlet, because of how poorly those games ran, they still sold decently, and they still have sold more than Power World, I'm assuming, across the entirety of this year. So I think it's completely ridiculous. Now, granted, how things happen in Japan with their laws and courts, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, and at least, and definitely not a Japanese lawyer at that. So, I don't know how this could turn out. But, just from my Western American layman's perspective, I think this is completely bogus. And this is just Nintendo grasping at straws and throwing a hissy fit because someone made something that people loved that is inspired by something they did, and they, can't do anything about it. And they don't, or rather, they choose not to make any sort of changes or innovations. And I'm not saying they have to like make their own type of Power World game per se. I not saying they have to go around like shooting Pikachu or something like that, but they don't make anything really big or anything that truly deviates. I mean, of course, they have made other games. I'm saying they, like, the Pokemon Dungeon games were different from the mainline type of games, but they don't make these huge changes for their main games. And so, yeah, if they just were willing to A, make those changes, or B, also, improve what they have, because, or at least improve the performance, because what they did with Scarlet and Violet, and especially the fact that some environment details were just bare bones anyway, so like, you should not be getting that type of performance for such bare bone graphics. Even if it is on the Switch, you should definitely be getting better performance than what you got. So that's all on Nintendo. I'm hoping that they lose this case, but I feel like at the very least they're going to try to stretch this as much as they can, if anything, just so Pocket Pair, you know, sinks money into lawyer fees and stuff like that. Because that is definitely the one thing that Nintendo does have that anyone they sue does not have, and that is the money to stretch out a case in court, even if they don't really have a case at all.
Right. Yeah, half of me wonders if Nintendo's legal system is basically how the quote unquote American legal system is portrayed in the Ace Attorney games, where it's like this doesn't represent American legal system at all. And it's funny. It's like I remember, of course, you know, we're both familiar with Nick Rekieta, and there were points in the past where viewers got him to play the Ace Attorney games, and he just said that they're terrible. And like it wasn't until I actually started watching some of the live streams of actual court cases, I'm like, wow, this is not even close. I mean, like they're completely different in terms of how the legal system works in the U.S., how cases go in court versus how they go in this game. I mean, I still love them. I think the games are entertaining and they're fun. Plus, they're great on 3DS. But it's just yeah, this whole case is just like, I hope Nintendo loses this because this is stupid. It's like literally they're just going after him because it's quote unquote competition. It's like they didn't go after any of them that were much more clones of Pokemon games that did this type of thing in the past, because the other ones weren't as successful. I mean, this one is, you know, millions upon millions of sales, and I mean, it must just be that the only way that they thought they would have a case was to go after this little tiny thing that was, I guess, technically started by them. Unless, I mean, it would be funny if it actually wasn't started by them and if they had taken it from someone else, but obviously the gameplay is completely different between Palworld and Pokemon. The only real similarity is some of the PAL designs, you know, compared with Pokemon designs. And apart from that, they're just completely different games. And yeah, okay, you have the ball throwing mechanic, which is like, okay, yeah, that's very similar. I can understand why they would say that it's patent infringement, but I did not realize that they filed a patent after Palworld came out, because if that's the case, then it's like that should completely disqualify their position. It's like you didn't have a patent on this until after the game came out, so this is not patent infringement because they did this before you filed the patent. But yeah. And I mean, granted, I haven't been a Pokemon fan in a really long time, or at least not like actually into the games. I loved Red and Blue. Gold and Silver were great as well. Even though I only actually played Gold. But then after that, it wasn't until Pokemon X came out that I was like actually excited about a Pokemon game. And I played X. I've actually played through it a couple times, and I enjoyed it. Even though it wasn't quite what I was hoping for, because I really just wanted a full 3D Pokemon game. And then when they finally came out with a full 3D Pokemon game, I just wasn't that interested anymore. It's just, I think it's mostly because the mechanics got too complicated. It just, like, it was very simple in Red and Blue and Gold and Silver. I mean, Gold and Silver added a little bit to the Red and Blue formula, and it was still really good. But then after that, it just kept getting more and more complicated, and it's just like, this just isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to do all this extra stuff. I just want to play like I did on the old games. And yes, this is old man yelling at clouds because, you know, when I was 10 years old and played Pokemon for the first time, you know, with Pokemon Blue on the Game Boy Color, like, it was a certain way, and then it just evolved over the years, for lack of a better term. But it got to a point where it's like, I don't enjoy this anymore. It's not fun to me. It's just overly complicated, and anyway, that's all I have to say on that topic.
Yeah. Now, I will say that I can partially agree with the things getting a little too complicated. I actually started very late. I actually started with Y, Pokemon Y, And
Yeah, I think it's
then
Y that I
I
have
played
No, it is X.
Alpha, or what was it, Alpha Sapphire,
Alpha Sapphire,
or like that.
yeah.
So like then I played that. I went back and played White, and then when I got to like Sun and Moon, I was like, I don't know, I don't really care for some of the mechanics in this game, and I was like, I don't know. And then I just like at that point didn't even get any of the ones on the Switch. But yeah, I definitely agree that some stuff just definitely got more complicated than they should have.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually did play the original Sapphire on GBA, but it was like I played Red and Blue, and then I played Gold, which I just emulated that one actually. And then I mean, eventually I ended up buying Gold and Silver, or no, I just bought Crystal. Anyway, and I went back and then I played Ruby. Yeah, it was Ruby that I played because it was like we'd found a cartridge in a laundromat and I didn't have a label on it, or someone else had found it and then they gave it to me and I checked it out and it's like, oh, it's Pokemon Ruby. So I finally played Gen 3. I did not like that generation at all. I really didn't like it.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't like it. And then on top of that, it was like the whole thing about too much water, you know, the meme for Alpha Sapphire and whatever, the Omega Ruby. I actually agreed with that. I was like, I mean, like, I understand the meme behind it, but I actually agree that it's like, yeah, the water travel made the game so exhausting at times. But really, there was just a lot of things I didn't like about that generation. I did actually play Platinum, and because I had read about it in Nintendo Power, and I enjoyed that for the most part, but still didn't quite like it as much as Gens 1 and 2. And then I did not play Gen 5 at all. And then I played X, which I enjoyed. And then I did not play any generation after that. And it was just it was just too complicated for me, and not like, oh, I don't understand this. Is more like it's just like, this isn't fun. You're just making it you're just taking away the simplicity that was there before and adding all these extra mechanics. And tactically you can get by just playing the old way, but it's just the fact that they kept introducing all these mechanics that just aren't fun to me anymore. Yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna yell at clouds anymore. But yeah, that's everything I have to say about this topic. You got anything else?
No, sir.